1999, I met Jill and fell in love. Now, I'm a really impulsive guy, and I'm overly optimistic, and I often get ahead of myself. And so 1 month into our relationship, I said to myself, this is it. She's the one. And we were so in sync. We loved so many of the same things. We loved antique together. We loved old houses. We had even dumpster dived together. So 1 month into our relationship, I said to myself, you know what? Because we love old houses and antiques, if I told Jill that I wanted to buy an old house, I bet she'd want to move in with me, we'd get married, and live happily ever after. So 1 month into our relationship, I said, Jill, I think I'm going to buy a nice old house. And Jill said, Ron, that's a great idea. And to my ears, that sounded like, Ron, let's get married. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm on track. We're doing great. We looked at all kinds of places for about a month. And then one day, I'm driving by myself. And I find this house, and it's the one on the corner. The house was built in 1897. And right here in the corner was a little for sale sign. And I couldn't believe this house was for sale because it was in a good part of town. The neighborhood was stable. And you couldn't tell from the outside how bad the inside was. So from the outside, I thought, wow, this is a really cool old house. And I couldn't get inside, couldn't get a hold of the realtor, but I brought Jill down, and Jill looked at the house, and I looked at the house, and she was excited, and I was excited, and I was thinking, man, my plan's working. This is going great. She's great. She's excited about the house. So the next week, we finally got in the house, and we found out why this house had sat on the market for nearly a year. Nobody would touch it because it had been owned for 10 years by a notorious fraternity, and that fraternity had torn this house up. Now, we're walking into this house, and here's what we find. There's garbage in every room. One room had garbage to the ceiling. Floors were ruined. The plumbing was shot, but the toilets were full. The roof needed repair. All the walls had been batted out. The lath and plaster walls had been batted with baseball bats and apparently hatchets and axes. The boys had used all the doors in the house as target practice with darts and knives and hatchets. They had batted out 72 hand-turned balusters from the main staircase. Graffiti was strafed all over the walls. Their furniture was in every room, and they had left full refrigerators in every room. And every time Jill and I passed by one, we said, don't open that, because it sat there for nearly a year. And at this point, she's saying, Ron, I just don't know. I just don't think we're going to do this. And now, at this point, I start having a recurring nightmare because I'm beginning to think that she might be right. What happens in my dream every night in my fitful sleep in the early morning hours is I have the same dream. And the dream is this, is that no matter where I would be in that dream, I could be having a picnic with friends, I could be at a shopping mall, it didn't matter. Wherever I was, I would sense that, I need to turn around. And I would turn around, and what I would discover would be a door. It would be a closed door. And every time I would go to the closed door and I would open it, I always opened it, and every time I opened it, I saw the same thing, different versions of the same thing. And it would be the world's filthiest bathroom. And it was my job, I never questioned this, it was my job to clean up the world's filthiest bathroom. So, in the dream, I'd find the door, and I'd open the door, and I'd say, oh, wow, looks like the world's filthiest bathroom. I guess I better clean it up. And so I would spend the last 20 minutes of my fitful sleep in the early morning hour trying to clean up the world's filthiest bathroom. And then I would wake up just feeling defeated and dirty and totally out of sorts. Now, as I was working on the house, the most interesting thing I kept discovering as I was getting into walls and ceilings, running electrical lines and repairing the patches and whatnot, as I was finding patent medicine bottles, empty patent medicine bottles. And patent medicine was the over-the-counter drug of choice for people, anybody, back 100 years or so ago, who needed some self-medication, mostly alcohol. And I would find these empty bottles throughout the house. And apparently the workers 100-some years ago, again, this house was built in 1897, they were medicating themselves on the job. And I could totally relate. I said, yeah, this is hard work. Yeah, I would do that too. But what it reminded me of, these workers medicating this, what it reminded me of was that
how on the edge Jill and I were, because we were totally alone. We had nobody to help us. We were both getting very little sleep, and we were totally stressed out. And I was just thinking horrible things about the frat boys who had torn up this house. And then I realized that, if one bad thing happened to me, if I slipped a disc, if I broke a leg, if I cut off a hand, we're done. We're done. This is it. We're done. We're bankrupt. We're out on the street. We're done. There's nobody to do this work. And we are so close to the edge. We're nearly broke. We've got no help. We're really in trouble. So, in July, one sunny July morning, as I am working on the front doors, I'm sanding the front doors of our old house, a young man approaches me with his girlfriend in tow, and he says, "Hey, wow, you fixing the place up, huh? I used to live here." I looked up from my work and I regarded this young man for a moment, and I thought, well, maybe this is the one good frat boy who did not tear up the house. Maybe the one good boy who did not do any of that damage. He looked to be in his late 20s, clean cut, smiling. He wanted a tour, obviously. He wanted me to show him what I had done to his house. He wanted me to show his girlfriend what it had been like back in the day. He could not have known that I was in a fragile state of mind. He could not have known that I was beginning to apprehend how totally lost I was in this work, how totally unfitted I was for doing all this work. He could not have known that Jill and I had discovered that none of our friends and none of our neighbors could help us. This beaming former frat boy could not have known that, unable to thwart my wholly unrealistic and impulsive optimism, I had, without consulting Jill, I had invited my entire family to spend Christmas with us in our quote-unquote newly restored house just a few months away. I saw everything that could not be and would not be right. "You!" I shouted. "What you did!" And I shook my wire brush at him. And "You and your frat boy friends nearly ruined this house. Do you hear what I'm saying?" The young man backed away, and I heard his girlfriend say, "Honey, do you hear what I'm saying? You and your frat boy friends, what you did!" The couple edged back to the sidewalk now, and they're looking at me. And I felt myself losing control, but I couldn't hold myself back. So, "You and your frat boy friends, shame on you! Do you hear shame on you!" The young couple now were out nearly to the street. You know what you did? This house is a wreck! Do you hear me? This house is a wreck!" The young couple not quite ran down the sidewalk, but they were really clipping along down the sidewalk, and they kept looking back as though I was going to chase them. And I just stood there, seething, and I heard in the back of my head a distant ringing like a fire alarm. And about that time, Jill said she had to take me away for a little vacation, and I didn't complain. She took me to a farmhouse in upstate New York, and we spent a week there, and all I did was sleep. That's all I did. I just slept, and I slept until late in the morning, and then late in the morning I would just trudge out to the side yard, and I'd fall flat on my back, stare at the sky, and I'd sleep some more. And it was a great relief to just get a little break. But I was just beginning to apprehend at that time everything that Jill was telling me was true. Come September, we would fail our inspection. I was only beginning to apprehend what a disaster Christmas was going to be when my mother and my brothers and their wives, and including my eldest brother's mother-in-law, all 6 of those people were going to come and visit us at Christmas time. And the book is worth reading just for that one chapter about the most disastrous Christmas you will ever read about, ever, anywhere.